Hello, my name is Joy Massey. Today's date is August the 4th, 2021. And today I will be doing a presentation on the hormonal control of implantation and early embryonic development. So to begin this presentation, we'll start with implantation and what it actually is. So implantation is when the developing embryo in the form of a blastocyst moves through the uterus, and then it makes contacts with the uterine wall and remains attached to it until birth. And in the left corner here, you can see where the embryo in its sac is already implanted into the endometrium. So implantation has already occurred in this particular picture. And so in the picture in the right, you can see this is the process from ovulation to implantation. So we'll talk about this a little further. So here you can see your ovary will release an egg into your fallopian tube. And so from here, the sperm will be waiting in that fallopian tube for fertilization to happen. And so when it's successful, the egg will begin to travel down. And you can see at day 0, this is where fertilization happens. And then you see the sperm cells that are surrounding that egg that has been released. And so the egg will start to move through and divide itself. So you can see that happening. And as it continuously divides, it'll become a blastocyst. And so what this is a hollow ball of about 100 cells. And so from here, this blastocyst at day 6 or 7, this is when implantation happens. So about after a week. For some women, it can be as early as 6 days, and for some women, it can be as late as 12 days. But for generic terms, we'll use around 7 days for the presentation. So implantation consists of 3 stages. So stage 1 is apposition, stage 2 is adhesion, and then stage 3 will be the actual invasion. And so it starts with the zona pellucida. It'll deteriorate from around this blastocyst, and then the blastocyst can be implanted. So in stage 1, the blastocyst contacts the implantation site of the endometrium. And then in stage 2, the trophoblast cells of this blastocyst attach to the receptor endometrial epithelium. So this is also known as adhesion. And then in the last stage, the invasive trophoblast cells cross the endometrial epithelial basement membrane, and then they invade the actual endometrium. So the blastocyst will secrete enzymes that allow it to invade the epithelium endometrium of the endometrium. And it's similar to a parasite invading its host cell. So as it starts to invade, the endometrial cells will grow out around the blastocyst until it's completely engulfed. And so day 8 or 9, you can see that the implanted blastocyst is here, and this would be the endometrium. Okay, so now that we've talked about what implantation actually is, we're going to talk about the hormones that are involved in this process. So to begin this topic, we'll talk about progesterone. So progesterone is a steroid hormone, and it's secreted by the corpus luteum. So the follicle will actually turn itself into the corpus luteum, and so it is like a yellow structure, and once the empty sac closes off, this is when this structure will develop. And so the progesterone, it stimulates glandular development and the development of new blood vessels in the endometrium. And so the endometrium is a complex system, and that its dynamic tissue is composed of epithelial cells, which have both luminal and glandular cells. So the progesterone will be responsible for stimulating the glandular development of the endometrium. And so also progesterone prepares the endometrium for the potential of pregnancy after ovulation. So it's going to trigger the lining to thicken, which will help it accept a fertilized egg. And so it will also prohibit the muscle contraction in the uterus that could cause your body to reject this egg. And also, while the body is producing high levels of progesterone, the body will not ovulate. And this is important so your body will not produce another egg and allow it to be fertilized. So further fertilization of this egg that's already been implanted will continue to develop. So moreover, we're going to talk about estrogen. There are 3 types of estrogen. You have estrone, estradiol, and estriol. So we're going to focus on estriol as it is produced by the corpus luteum as well, and it's going to rise after ovulation. It's also responsible for proliferation. So in this process, proliferation will be the follicular phase, and it's going to be under the influence of rising estrogen levels due to the growing ovarian follicles leading to proliferation of the epithelium, stroma, and the vascular endothelium to cause regeneration of the endometrium. So these rising levels are going to be observed before the receptive phase, and it's going to remain there until mid-luteal phase where the estrogen, to see if estrogen is necessary for implantation. So we're going to look further into the levels of estrogen and progesterone. So this graph shows here these levels throughout. You have the menstrual phase, which would be your actual, where you menstruate and you produce, and you have a period. So during this phase, your estrogen and progesterone levels are going to be relatively low. And as you reach your follicular phase, your estrogen is going to rise a lot higher than the progesterone is. And so this is where we talk about the estrogen and proliferation. So here you can determine whether you need these estrogen levels to continue to rise. So in the luteal phase, this is basically where the egg travels down the fallopian tube into the ovaries and you have implantation. So normally if you do not have fertilization of an egg, these levels will drop and you will have a period and this phase starts back over. However, because we have had implantation happen, these levels will continue to rise, and the corpus luteum will not continue to produce these. Instead, the placenta will actually take over and start to produce these. And so these will continuously be produced throughout pregnancy. So after implantation happens, you have an embryo and it begins to develop. So there are 4 important hormones that go into this process, and also embryonic development can also be called embryogenesis. So progesterone and estrogen are still going to be important in this process as well. In addition to these, you have human chorionic gonadotropin, also known as HCG. And HCG is what's going to be used to determine if you're pregnant in a pregnancy test. So pregnancy tests, they try to detect this hormone, and it can tell you if you're pregnant or not. So if you get pregnant, naturally your body will start to produce this hormone. And this hormone is actually responsible for maintaining that corpus luteum that we talked about earlier. And so it enables the corpus luteum to keep producing progesterone until around the 10th week, and that's when the placenta will take over and produce that progesterone. And so it is a peptide hormone, and it's secreted by the chorionic villi and developing placenta. So it's also structurally related to LH, which is a luteinizing hormone, and it binds to these LH receptors. So next you have the human chorionic somatotropin, which is also known as HCS. So this hormone is structurally related to the growth hormone and prolactin. And so this is going to be necessary for breast development while you're pregnant and for milk production, which is also known as lactation. So also another role for HCS would be the alteration of the mother's glucose and fatty acid metabolisms to support this growing embryo. So the role of progesterone and estrogen are continued in the development of the fetus. And so they are going to be produced continuously during pregnancy. First by the corpus luteum, as mentioned earlier, and then ACG, as mentioned, will help the corpus luteum to produce these hormones. And then the placenta will take over with this production. So with high circulating levels of these steroid hormones, the feedback suppression of the pituitary continues throughout pregnancy, preventing another set of follicles from beginning to develop, which in layman terms just means your body will continue to produce these hormones so that another egg cannot develop. So during pregnancy, estrogen contributes to the development of milk-secreting ducts of the breast, and then progesterone is essential for maintaining the endometrium. It also helps suppress uterine contractions. And the placenta will make a variety of other hormones that are not mentioned on this slide, which include inhibin and purinin, but the function of these remain unclear, so we are only going to focus on these 4 hormones. And that will conclude my presentation today. Thank you so much.